Before we get into the video, if you want to see just a quick wrap up on the Volt, go to the end of the video and you'll find me talking about that. Interspersed throughout the whole video, I do talk a little bit about, as I'm doing the road trip, about the car and what I like about it. But if you want just a quick rundown at the end, skip to the end and you can check that out. Let's get started. It is Monday morning, about 6:30 a.m. I am headed to Kansas, so we're going to see how the Volt does. I'm actually going to pay attention to the mileage and all that good stuff. This is basically just going to be the gasoline motor and how it does, because I won't use the electric motor once I get through the city, so it'll just be pretty much using gas all the way through to Kansas. I've done this before and seemed like I average about 36 to 40 miles per gallon, so I'm going to check out how that does this time. And also over this trip, just give you a review of the Volt. We've had it now for, I think it's been a couple years now, maybe a little bit longer. I can never keep track of anything anymore time-wise. It's flying by so fast. But we have 36,600 miles on here now. We bought it with about 20-ish. I'll put it on the screen because I don't remember either. But it's a fantastic vehicle, so we're going to talk about it over the trip. And if you guys have questions, as always, please leave those below. So let's get this thing started. I got a long trip ahead of me. All right, so we just got gas. We are on our way. You can see we used about 8 miles of range. And we've got about 7 to 10 miles to the freeway. And then I'll take it off electric mode and we'll see how the gas does. So we are 1.4 miles from the freeway, so get an idea, looking at 1,124 miles. Almost 17 hours of driving. Probably going to break it up. I'm going to stop in about 11 or 12 hours, depending on how I'm doing. So we're going to switch over to hold mode, which allows us to switch and use just the gas motor, and we're going to do that right now. Let's see. Oops, went too far there. There we go. So now the gas motor is turning on, and we'll save the electric motor for when we get into situations where it makes more sense. Heading out I-10 basically towards New Mexico. It's really pretty along the freeway here, actually. I don't get great views of it, but through Benson, Wilcox, all that, some beautiful mountains. The Chiricahuas are out here. And then you go through Texas Canyon, which if you've ever been through on the way to Arizona coming into town, you'll see all these huge rocks. It's a really pretty area and kind of a nice place to check out. Now, earlier I mentioned the hold mode. If you're not familiar with the Chevy Volt, one of the cool things about this car is you can run on pure EV in town, charge every day at home, never use gas, or like when we're doing here, going out of town, you put it in the hold mode, save EV for when you're in town, and just use gasoline. It's really awesome and makes this car very usable on road trips versus a Tesla where you have to stop. This trip would have actually taken me 3 hours plus more of charging time, and adding that to an 18-hour trip is not exactly fun. So here you can see just a quick update on where we're going. We're about 84 miles into the trip. I know it's really hard to read that Volt dashboard because it flashes like that with the camera, and I apologize for that. But just a quick update, 84 miles in here as we head towards New Mexico. We are now in New Mexico, and you can tell because the road has become suddenly terrible. I used to think Arizona had terrible roads until I started doing this trip, and wow, New Mexico. You really need to get your action together. At least this part of New Mexico is pretty bad. And we're almost down to 1,000 miles to go. And so far the car's been doing pretty well. We're at 41.2 miles per gallon, or 41 miles per gallon. All right, we are at our first stop here. 875 miles to go, 13 hours and 42 minutes. And the car's doing great so far. We've gone 259 miles since we filled up. We're at about 39.8 miles per gallon. And that's fluctuated anywhere from about here all the way up to 42. And right now it's saying we have 104 miles of range left to go just on the gas. And electric says 30 still. Just filled up. EV range is at 31, as you can see there, and gas range, we're going to go back to hold mode. Oops. Is now at 338. This little section is actually a pretty part of New Mexico. There's really nice mountains here, and then a little further up the road, so it's kind of breaks up the monotony of the drive a little bit. This is a terrible attempt at me showing you white sands. Sorry, didn't want to stop. All right, we're just outside Lincoln, New Mexico. And there's an update on the time. We've got 11 hours to go, 716 miles to go. So far, we're looking at 420 miles down, averaging 38.1 on the gas motor so far. And just a few things about the car real quick I thought I would talk about. A little bit of a review. This is an amazing place to be on road trips. This is the second time, I think I mentioned earlier, that I've done this Kansas trip in this car, and this car is rather quiet. The suspension is very nice. I think it's quieter than the Tesla, and the suspension is definitely more cushioned than the Tesla as well. Clearly, you don't have the speed in this car, the acceleration that you do in the Tesla, but this thing is more than capable enough on the freeway going up grades. You can get a little bit of, I'd say, engine lag and noise if you have no battery left at all and you're going up steep passes. This motor strains a little bit, but you can still keep up with traffic no problem, and even accelerate. So I've never had an issue where there wasn't enough power just using the gas motor, but this car is certainly designed to kind of use both in unison when you're in the hold mode. But the sound system in here is fine. The controls are good. The seats are very comfortable. I really have no complaints about being inside this cabin. This car does not have adaptive cruise control, but to be honest, it's not something I ever used in any of the other vehicles I've ever owned. I used it a little bit in the Tesla, but not that big of a fan of it because of the phantom braking. So you can see here I started getting just a little bit of rain, and there were storms all around me. And one of the great things about this travel day, honestly, it's been so hot in this part of the country that I had clouds and rain on and off all day, and it made this trip so much nicer than having to deal with constant heat. All right, here we are at stop 2. Just got gas for the second time. Actually, I'm sorry, third time. We are at 475 miles now, still averaging 38.6. And we are looking at still at 681 miles to go, 10 hours, 17 minutes. Probably gonna drive another 4 hours or so. So let's get rocking. Currently in Vaughn, New Mexico, forgot to mention that. Interesting little place. Turn this to hold mode. There we go. So this is Santa Rosa, New Mexico. There's going to be a clinical diagnosis that's going to be required to differentiate. 6 hours or 621 miles to go.
It's an interesting shit. I would look at this as more like this affects the hippocampus, or this affects the...
They have a place called the Blue Hole here, which is this giant, super deep, cold place where you can dive and cliff dive and do all this other stuff. Looks interesting. Don't have time though. Well, I just missed the sign, but we are now in Texas, and the roads are better almost instantly. Sorry, New Mexico. You had some roads that were okay, but for the most part, not the greatest. So we are, I don't know, an hour and a half from Amarillo, which is, I think, where I'm going to stop, but we'll see. We are 507 miles to go, 8 hours still, and if I kept going, it'd be 2:42 in the morning, but that's not going to happen. And right now, I don't know if you can see it, sorry about the flashing on the camera there, but we are still 39.4 miles per gallon, 630.4 miles into the trip. And on this actual second fuel stop, we're about 206 miles of range left. Alrighty, so we are at our third gas stop. Somewhere in, I think we're past Dalhart, Texas, and I don't know what little town this is, but 702 miles in, 39.3 miles per gallon so far at this point. And then energy, if you look over here, it actually shows us that we use 17.86 gallons of gas so far, and it's given us 38.8 miles per gallon. It's probably a little closer. And then still that same 17.6 when I was going through Tucson on the electric motor. But so far the trip's going really well, honestly. We are, how many miles am I in? How many hours? I think I'm driving a little over 11 hours now. I feel fine. I made the decision to go to Liberal, Kansas. It's about an hour away, hour and a half away. And it's a little bit bigger city, so I'll be able to find somewhere to hang out, get some sleep tonight, and then finish my drive tomorrow. So we'll check in here in a little bit. Hey, look. Only one of the windmills is working. Shocker. One of the things that was amazing when I first did these drives was just how huge these granary facilities are. Pretty amazing. And you drive by a number of them as you kind of go in through these small little towns. As I ended my day on the road, I was greeted with this beautiful sunset. And it really was an amazing travel day. And after so long in the car, still felt great. No back pain, nothing like that. The Chevy Volt is a great little vehicle. So this is Tuesday morning. Ended up with 784.5 miles driven yesterday, and the car ended up at 39.7 miles per gallon. Still have 29 miles on the battery. So waiting for the map to load, but we're looking at about 5.5 hours today, I think, to Garnett, and kind of update you once this thing loads. I'm not really sure what the problem is, but it is not loading right now. All right, finally loaded. So 5 hours, 43 minutes, 355 miles to go. We'll get there about 2:15 this afternoon. That's obviously, I'll be stopping a couple times, so that's not quite right, but looking forward to it. On today's trip, I'm going to try and talk about the car a little bit more. Did some yesterday, but we're going to try it again, see what happens. So hopefully you can see that, but 12 hours, 19 minutes right now, 33 seconds. But so I did about 12 hours and 18 minutes yesterday. Long day, but actually went really well. As the day started off and moved along here, you can see I came across a train carrying giant blades for the windmills. And I was kind of making fun of the windmills earlier because only one of them was working. To be fair, there were a number of fields of windmills set up that were working fine. Personally, not a fan of this energy production. Some of the most expensive energy, and the returns are very poor for what that you put into them. And they still don't know what they're going to do. They say they recycle this stuff, but I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was pretty cool to see them and how massive they are on this train, and this went on for quite some time. So it's just stopped here the first time this morning. We're up to 953.9 miles. 40.2 miles per gallon now, which is cool. And so far on the whole trip, we've used 23.71 gallons.
One day off for everybody. Instead, the population
is
divided into cohorts.
So here we go. All right, so here we are, about 41 miles to go, and we're 1,102 miles in so far, and we're still averaging about 40.8, at least according to that gauge there. When we go to the energy tab, I think this one's a little more accurate. 27.04 gallons used so far, 40 miles per gallon on this guy. Honestly, pretty darn awesome. For the most part, this is pretty flat. I mean, there was definitely some elevation gain coming out of Arizona up into New Mexico. But this second half of the trip has been pretty flat. I mean, obviously we're going across, went through Texas, part of Texas, Panhandle, and then being in Kansas. So I've had amazing weather, full cloud cover yesterday to keep the heat down. Today's sunny, but it's a lot cooler here. I woke up and it was 67. We've been waking up in Tucson in the high 70s, 80s. It's been really, really hot the last probably 2-3 weeks. So nice blessing this morning for that, but getting close to getting there. Car's doing amazing, and it's been a great trip. Arrived at my destination. So It's still counting, but it's been about 30 seconds. That's my total drive time from the time I left the gas station in Tucson. And then average speed was about 61. And so it's 1,143 miles. I averaged 40.8 miles per gallon on here. And again, if we go over to the energy tab, they're saying 40 miles. 23.5 miles I used on electric, and I accidentally left it on hold mode for a couple miles a while ago. And 40.5 combined. What's this? So, happy to be here. Glad that ride's over. Now we're just going to enjoy it for a few days. As you can see, I'm here in my house. I did not talk much more on the camera on the trip, so I wanted to finish the video off with really kind of diving into the Volt and what we think of it as a family here after 16,000 miles. It's got 37, almost 38,000 miles on it now. I've done multiple road trips in it, and we use it, both of us use it here to commute to work when one of us is using the Tesla or the Jeep. And I'll say it again, I've said it in a lot of videos, there really hasn't been a car that I've owned, and I've owned a lot of them over the years, that surprised me as much as the Chevy Volt in how much I like it and how good it is at kind of doing everything. When I bought it, as you may know if you've been following along, I bought it because I had retired from the fire department and needed something to commute, not only to work here, which is about 20 miles each way, but also up to Phoenix to catch flights. And then now I've been using it for longer trips. Like I'm taking it to California here in about a week, so I'm going to be out there for a while for work. So I bought it for that reason. And the thing I love about this car is a hybrid, if you don't know, and it has between 50 and 60 miles of range, and you can run it strictly on electric, and then you can turn that off. Like I said earlier, you can drive on the freeway on the gas motor pretty much alone, even though it does still use a little bit of the electric motor here and there. So if you use this car in town, you're not going to use any gas at all. And if you're interested in electric cars, but you're kind of worried about range anxiety or traveling with it, and if it's your only vehicle, then this is an amazing car for you to have. And I will say, as a Tesla owner, I would never at this point own just an electric vehicle. There's absolutely no way. Yes, the supercharging network's awesome, and you can travel across this country in a Tesla pretty easily with a lot more time, but I personally would not want to own only an electric car. And beyond Tesla, there's not one vehicle I would purchase that's full electric that's not a Tesla if I planned on road tripping it. The network beyond Tesla is not there, and I know there's been a number of manufacturers who are going to supposedly start using a Tesla supercharging network, which good for them, that's great. As a Tesla owner, I'm not super excited about that, but good. That's going to be great for other people who have cars that they basically can't take out of town right now. The Electrify America and the other charging networks are terrible. So, all that being said, if you're interested in electric and you don't want to pay for gas when you're in commuting every day, you cannot beat this vehicle, in my opinion, or really any plug-in hybrid. There's a bunch of them out. I don't think any of them have the 50 to 60 mile range that even the older Volts have. Maybe the new Prius is getting closer, but you plug in at home, it costs you not even $1 a day to charge it, and you never have to go to the gas station unless you do a road trip. So it's pretty awesome in that sense. The interior of this vehicle is outstanding. The only thing I would say is if you want ventilated seats or you want adaptive cruise control, my specific car does not have adaptive cruise, and I don't think they offer ventilated seats. But some of the Volts do have adaptive if you're into that kind of thing. Everything else about it, the stereo, the AC, the heater, the heated seats, are all great. The infotainment, the stereo is more than adequate. The screen is very responsive and works excellent. It's just a very, very nice place to be. I drove 18 hours home without any major stops, more than 20 minutes. coming back from Kansas, and I was fine when I got here. My back's not dying, my legs aren't dying. Some cars you sit in and it just sucks after a while. And I've done that trip, that 18-hour trip, 3 times now, and I'm sorry, twice, and the other one was over 12 hours again. So it's very doable in that little vehicle, and it's great. As you saw from the last part of this video, it averaged 40.8 miles per gallon, and that was averaging, I think it said 61 miles an hour across over 1,100 miles. And calculating out, I spent $207 on gas, and it comes to about 18 cents a mile, which is pretty darn good, in my opinion. And I think total gallons of gas, 28.04, sorry. So the car is a very capable road tripper, and it's very awesome for inside the city. Can't say enough good things about it. And you can find them for less than 20 grand, all the way up to about 25, 26, depending on how many miles and if you get the premium versus the LT. So if you're looking at a Chevy Volt, I wholeheartely say if you can find a good one, it's absolutely worth it. Now, 2 quick things. I've had 2 problems with the car, and I've had to take it to the dealer. The first one was a shift to park situation that was actually kind of a lot of the Chevy vehicles had. And it's basically shift to park, the car doesn't know you shifted to park, so it won't turn off. And there's some kind of electric sensor or something in it that just wasn't working correctly. Took it to the dealer in the first few months that we bought the car, and they fixed it for free. It was under the Voltec warranty. That's, I think, 8 years. It's coming off the top of my head right now, can't remember. So that was covered. And then just a couple months ago, my wife came home from work, plugged it in, and the car said unable to charge, take it to the dealer. I looked up the problem, and it was pretty clear after looking at my coolant tank that the coolant tank for the battery specifically was low, and that's what ended up being the problem. So I could have done it myself. Chevy kind of discourages that, and they actually have like a little lock thing on the coolant tank where you have to bend it to put it on. I watched some videos about it, and you can find those online if you're having that issue. But I took it in just to make sure, had everything pressure tested, and it was all fine. I think it was like $200 to check everything. But those are the only 2 issues I've had with the car. Otherwise, it's been great. And like I said, it's got almost 40,000 miles on it now. And we really have no plans on getting rid of it. It's in my opinion, almost the perfect vehicle for somebody who wants to save money on gas when you're in town, but you also want a vehicle that you can take out of town. Because like I said, you can certainly road trip a Tesla, and you can road trip other vehicles. I've watched a lot of things on Rivians and other vehicles trying to go long distances, and it's just dealing with the supercharger network outside of Tesla is a nightmare. So good luck if you decide to do that, or if you have one of those vehicles. But personally, I just don't think it's worth it, and would not buy anything other than a Tesla if I'm planning on going outside of my city. So that's about it for this video. I just wanted to share the road trip. I went back to Kansas to see family, and talk about the Volt a little bit, since we've had it for, gosh, it's only been well, it's getting close to 2 years, 18, 19 months. Seems like it's been longer than that for some reason, but honestly, time has been flying since I retired from the fire department, so I'm kind of confused with all that. But awesome vehicle, good stuff. If you guys have any questions, please leave those below. I'm happy to help you out if I can, and we will catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.